All right. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. If anyone in the chat can hear me, just push one. All right. Got a confirmation from the chat. Thank you for the confirmation. Welcome back to the Black Brain Trust. This is episode 492. Geopolitics. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. Hit that notification bell so you get all the updates from the Black Brain Trust, including those posted on the community tab. Docket and description beneath the video for you to follow along with. If you want to engage in discussion, there'll be a link in the chat for you to click on. When you click on the link, make sure you raise your hand so that one of us can acknowledge you and advance you to the panel. All right. All right, links in the chat. I'll give you guys a few seconds to get on if you're trying to get on. Let me acknowledge people who are in here early. Soul Shader, what's going on? Excalibur, salute. RWP, good evening to you. Caribbean Gal. DM, what's going on? Man of Tomorrow, what up? All right, Mr. Pump and Dump, what's up? So, yeah, Trump's invisible war. I don't really have a whole lot to open up with other than the fact he just had a press conference about 45 minutes ago. Didn't say a whole lot, which doesn't surprise me. China White, how are you doing, dear? Trump said something that I thought was really interesting. He said that 300 plus million people in the United States of America, that they're not going to test everybody. Well, how are you going to know who has what? They make it seem like, it's impossible to test people, but in reality, you could potentially test the strongest demographics, New York City, Atlanta, Miami. You could potentially test people. He doesn't seem to be all that interested, I think, because they don't want to spend the money. They don't want to spend the money. It's an infrastructure issue too, but they just don't want to spend the money. That's really what it comes down to. All right. I think this is first person. Yo, what's going on? Put some volume on your mic.
How do I sound?
All right, you're good now.
All right.
All right, let me get to the first item on the docket from Al Jazeera. U.S. cybersecurity firm sees spying surge by Chinese hacking group. FireEye says it's one of the broadest campaigns by a Chinese cyber espionage actor we have observed in recent years. A United States cybersecurity firm says it has detected a surge in new cyber spying by a suspected Chinese group dating back to late January, when coronavirus was starting to spread outside of China. FireEye Incorporated said in a report on Wednesday it had observed a spike in activity from a hacking group it dubs APT41 that began on January 20th and targeted more than 75 of its customers, from manufacturers and media companies to healthcare organizations and nonprofits. There were multiple possible explanations for the spike in the activity, said FireEye activity security architect Christopher Glyer, pointing to a long simmering tension between Washington and Beijing over trade and more recent clashes over the coronavirus outbreak, which has killed more than 17,000 people since late last year. The report said it was one of the broadest campaigns by a Chinese cyber espionage actor we have observed in recent years. FireEye declined to identify affected customers. The Chinese Foreign Ministry did not directly address FireEye's allegations, but said in a statement, China was a victim of cybercrime and cyber attack. The U.S. Office of the Director of National Intelligence declined to comment. FireEye said in the report that APT41 abused recently disclosed flaws in software developed by Cisco, Citrix, and others to try to break into scores of companies' networks in the US, Canada, and the United Kingdom, Mexico, Saudi Arabia, Singapore, and more than a dozen of other countries. Cisco said in the email it had fixed the vulnerability and was aware of attempts to exploit it. A sentiment echoed by Citrix, which said it had worked with FireEye to help identify potential compromises. Others have also spotted a recent uptick in cyber espionage activity linked to Beijing. Matt Webster, a researcher with SecureWorks, Dell Technology cybersecurity arm, said in the email that his team had also seen evidence of increased activity from Chinese hacking groups over the last few weeks. In particular, he said his team had recently spotted new digital infrastructure associated with APT41, which SecureWorks dubs Bronze Atlas. Tying hacking campaigns to any specific country or entity is often fraught with uncertainty, but FireEye said it had assessed with moderate confidence that APT41 was composed of Chinese government contractors. FireEye's head of analysis, John Hultquist, said the surge was surprising because hacking activity attributed to China has generally become more focused. This broad action is a departure from that norm. For reference, I do work in cybersecurity. APT41 is not something I have been tracking personally. We don't have a lot of the equipment that in products that would be vulnerable to this, we don't actually have in stock. So we're probably not tracking it for that very reason. But like the article is saying, it's always hard to apply a nation state to an APT, advanced persistent threat connotation. So I don't know if it's China doing this. They say it's China doing it. It could be a variety of actors. We don't know. They just say what they say. We heard about the Russian hacking of the election, and now we saw that these momos walked it back. So we don't know. We probably never know, but that's what's going on.
Yeah, that's I won't say that it wouldn't be a possibility. I mean, especially if it's, what a lot of the Chinese suspect that, this whole Corona thing is an attack on them. I guess, one way it could be viewed from the United States side, if you see an uptick in, hacks and stuff like that, this is a reprisal of some kind. So I'm not pointing at anything being the actuality, like what actually happened, right? It's just, you can kind of read these things as that, like reading the tea leaves, you know what I mean? But I guess as this goes on, more will come out. I think more will definitely come out.
Yeah, and usually FireEye is pretty accurate with their assessments. I just don't like to point the finger. Using these sort of perspective. I just call them what it's labeled as APT. I don't usually apply a country to them, so
Right, right,
or nation or ethnicity to them.
right. Because it could be somebody else. It very well could be.
Right. We have Mrs. Evolving on the panel. Good evening to you.
Welcome.
Good evening.
How goes it?
Here, in isolation.
I hear you. I hear you. All right, let me jump to this next item on the docket from BusinessInsider.com. New video shows Russia's Su-57 stealth fighter launching a missile from its side weapon bay for the first time. It's actually pretty interesting. I don't know if the video's up. Oh, here it is. Yeah, I wonder what MOT would think of this. He's a former Air Force guy, so or even DE Raptor.
This new Russian hardware right here.
Yeah, that's the equivalent of the F-35, fifth generation. I haven't personally seen the F-35 do that, or even F-22 for that matter. So
is that a stall that is performing right there?
he's climbing at the same time.
Like climbing, yeah.
That's something that most jets don't do.
Like a slow ascent.
Yeah. So that means you're coming up under a bomber or something like that, and then you're shooting upward. That's actually pretty.
Yeah, that's awesome. Sneak tip.
Yeah, it's a pretty strategic move to make. All right.
Those things look dope.
Yeah, it does. It looks really, really, really neat. Fifth generation fighter. So I'll read this one caption. Russia has been actively working to expand the export potential of the Su-57 aircraft. NATO designation felon. A new video just released by Russian Ministry of Defense on their prolific official social network channels seems to serve that specific purpose. The footage shows the fifth generation aircraft from almost any angle during taxi and takeoff, formation, and low-level flying, high G maneuvering and landing. Among all these interesting scenes, you also get a close-up glimpse at the IFR in-flight refueling probe, and above all, at what appears to be the right side weapons bay. In fact, the aircraft is equipped with two triangular-shaped canoe-like bays outward of the air intakes, with the door that would open to fire at AAM air-to-air missile during combat. The use of the inside weapons bay would allow for the aircraft to keep its low observability in combat. The video shows the missile already outside the weapons bay, but this is probably due to the fact that a launcher extends the missile into the airstream from the clamshell-like door. That's pretty interesting. I'm assuming it's coming from here.
It opens up and shoots it out.
Yeah. Pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's like all your shit is concealed.
Yeah. This is F-22 Raptor. Yeah, that's pretty interesting. It's a good time to be inside the aerospace industry right now.
What are you talking about in terms of defense?
Yeah,
Yeah, 'cause I would say the airline, just a regular commercial airline, they kind of just got bailed out. But
Yeah.
yeah.
all right, we can get to the next item on the docket. This one is from airspace.mag.com. The shock and resurrection of the F-15. Who says you can't teach an old eagle new tricks?
Like retrofitting?
Yeah, so that's kind of typical what they do with the F-15, F-16s. I think this is the E variant, but even the F-16 is already up to like the J variant. So the future of fighter aircraft production is showcased in Building 27A at the sprawling Boeing manufacturing facility in St. Louis. Complex components that once were screwed and riveted together from 5 pieces of metal are now monolithic units machined out of single billets of titanium. Thousands of holes that previously had been drilled laboriously by union workers are now punched out with matchless precision by a robot. So much for automation. Even as a pair of massive wings take shape, the building is eerily quiet. Thanks to automation, the wings are assembled by 20 laborers rather than the 80 required in the past. But what's really strange about the scene underway in this St. Louis factory is that these advanced manufacturing techniques are being applied to an airplane whose original design dates back to the Vietnam War. Stranger still, they will soon be used to build an upgraded version of this 48-year-old warhorse, which is about to become the newest fighter in the Air Force arsenal. Hold on a second. Excuse me. A lot of people think that militaries just buy new planes as soon as they come out, but that's not the case. A plane like this, or even the MiG-21, those planes are 50 years old. I think even closer to that, 45 to 50 years old. They don't typically upgrade all that often. So my understanding is that the F-35 is supposed to be here until about 2065, 2070.
Well, they're not being, there's not like a constant damn dogfight going on above our heads, right?
No, this isn't like Vietnam. That was the last place you can have a dogfight.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like now, the approach here is to have variations, like upgraded variations and versions of one plane before that plane just phases out as a whole, and then you go with completely new design. It's different than like you get all right, let's take, we've been covering like the C8, the Corvette C8, right, for a good minute. And all the previous generations were all front engine, right? And then you hit C8 and boom, changing, game changer. It's mid-engine now, right? So it's kind of like the same thought, even with like planes and stuff like that. They design them in such a way where, you just gut out the electronics, put a whole new kit in, and the next there's all these new capabilities that structurally the same plane has. Now I don't know how much of these improvements and upgrade. Now I think you were talking about another plane that kind of underwent the same type of upgrades, and it performed like
MiG-21.
Yeah, and like it was like a night and day difference in terms of its performance, even though it was the same shape and same design.
It kept up. It kept up with I think it was either F-18 or F-16. Maybe even the F-22 if I want to be. No, it was the F-22, I think. But the point of the matter here is that plane was designed in the 1960s.
Right.
It was a game changer too, and it was actually the most popular plane in the fighter plane in the world. By a long shot. A lot of countries bought it because it was dirt cheap in comparison to what the Americans could offer and could perform just as well as the Americans. And so an Israeli firm actually designed fifth generation electronics for it. So it's a whole digital suite of computing inside this whole analog plane. So you imagine adding artificial intelligence to say, something like what do you call it? A Lotus, like a Lotus Elise or something like that. Imagine if you added artificial intelligence so it can manage, the braking and all these other sort of measurements inside of it. So that's what they did, and the plane actually performed pretty well. And so the plane could actually be bought for like a $500,000 now, and you could actually buy them from auction sites because countries auction them off. So that's the point that I was just making before.
Yeah.
The Boeing F-15EX will be the latest and most capable variant of an airplane that has been in uninterrupted production since its first flight in 1972. It began life as an air superiority fighter known as the McDonnell Douglas F-15 Eagle and later morphed into a two-seat multi-role ground pounder dubbed the F-15E Strike Eagle. Long after the Air Force took delivery of its final F-15E in 2004, the St. Louis plant continued to build F-15s for sales to allies ranging from Israel to South Korea. Today, the wings being put together in the building 27A will be attached to an F-15QA destined for Qatar. While completed, F-15 SAs coming out of the building 67 are headed for Saudi Arabia. But the F-15EX will be smarter and more powerful than both. It's a living, breathing, evolving platform, says Boeing Vice President for F-15 programs, Prat Kumar. The most recent avatar of F-15 is nothing like what we used 45 years ago. Frankly, it's nothing like what the Air Force bought 15 or 20 years ago. F-15EX has a fly-by-wire flight control system and one of the fastest, most capable mission computers in the world. It has an advanced all-glass cockpit that can display synthesized data in a way that is useful for the warfighter. It has the most advanced radar on any fighter jet, and it carries more weapons than any other fighter. The Department of Defense 2020 budget request includes $1 billion to procure 8 F-15EXs for the Air Force. I mean, imagine that, $1 billion on a fucking plane.
That's how McDonnell Douglas and Boeing, that's how they stay in business, man. They get them $1 billion orders.
Yeah. With plans to acquire an additional 72 planes over the next 4 years to replace outdated and overworked F-15Cs and Ds that are ready to be retired, this would be a financial bonanza for Boeing, which has already landed a Navy contract for another so-called legacy aircraft, the F/A-18 Super Hornet. But the Air Force decision to acquire the F-15EX has drawn a lot of flack, an especially appropriate metaphor considering the size and clarity of the fighter's radar signature. Like the Super Hornet, the EX is a fourth generation airplane, so designated because though it incorporates a host of sophisticated avionics and digital flight control systems, it lacks the signal attribute of fifth generation fighters such as Lockheed Martin's F-22 and F-35. Stealth technology. Critics say that investing in the F-15EX makes about as much sense as stocking up on slide rules. Over 80% of the Air Force inventory is non-stealth legacy technology, says Douglas A. Berkey, executive director of the Mitchell Institute for Aerospace Studies at the Air Force Association. Types like the F-16, B-52, and F-15E will be in service for decades. We don't need more of that sort of capability. We need to rebalance the force toward newer fifth generation capabilities like the F-35 B-21, a stealthy strategic bomber under development by B-2 builder Northrop Grumman, and the next generation fighter termed NGAD. NGAD stands for Next Generation Air Dominance. A similar recommendation was made in a report released last March by the Center for Strategic and Budgetary Assessments, a national security policy think tank. While F-15Xs are more capable of fourth generation plus aircraft, they would not be able to operate in future contested and highly contested environments, the report says. The Air Force should instead consider replacing some retiring F-15CDs with modified F-35As, a bridge to the future air superiority family of capabilities. Yeah, I agree with that. I don't see why anybody would want to spend that kind of money on non-stealth artillery or machinery. It doesn't make any sense. You already spent 200, 300, 500 billion dollars on the F-35 and it doesn't even work. And yet you'll spend more money on non-stealth equipment. Where's the common sense in this? So
the common sense in it is in contracts to build this stuff, right? Because companies put a lot of money into the R&D and developing it, but they require the government to give them an order in order to run the production, right? So it's kind of how the business model is predicated. And if we've got this jet that we can see 3 or 4 upgrade cycles on that before we get to the stealth jet, we'd like to get money for this one, and then then do the upgrades on those so we can get money for the upgrades to perform those, and then we'll move to the stealth stuff. So it's kind of like because you'll always, well, I mean, you see it in movies how like you have like military leaders say, well, we need this and we need that, and then the politicians go and get them the shit that they don't want, because they basically had to put the order in with the manufacturer to get the stuff that they need to go and run a production on now. That's lost money if they develop, a plane and then don't do a production run on it.
However unpopular the Air Force decision may be, people on both sides of the debate agree that the current crisis, what defense strategists believe is an air dominance fighter gap, was caused by the decision to cut production of the Lockheed Martin F-22 Raptor. Developed to replace the F-15C and D, the F-22 turned out to be so expensive, $350 million per plane. By some estimates, if development costs are factored in, that beginning in the 1990s, successive presidential administrations hacked away at the number of fighters their budget office would approve. In 2009, the Obama administration ended F-22 production at 187. When he canceled the program, then Secretary of Defense Bob Gates, explained that the Air Force would still have an adequate number of fifth generation fighters because it had contracted to buy more than 1,000 Lockheed's newer F-35As. He predicted that by 2020, the Air Force would have 1,100 fifth generation F-22s and F-35. Imagine that, man. $350 million a plane, you would have 1,100 of these stupid planes. But F-35 production has had its own problems. And by March 2017, early in Trump's administration, the Air Force had only 358 fifth generation fighters. The fighter gap was becoming real, and the government relations teams at both Lockheed and Boeing primed their PowerPoints. Lockheed began pushing for an increased rate of production for its entry, the most advanced fighter in the world, while Boeing argued that a bells and whistles update of the advanced F-15 was the most affordable, most reliable way to fill the gap. The Office of Secretary of Defense picked Boeing. With an anticipated price tag less than $80 million per unit, the F-15EX costs roughly as much as the F-35 does today. But proponents argue that the F-15 will be cheaper to maintain than a fighter with stealth coating that requires a special treatment. What does it need, like armor or something? The Air Force Association estimates that cost of flying an F-35 at $35,000 an hour, the F-15EX at $27,000 an hour, Pilots and maintenance crews, says Boeing, would need less training on the legacy fighter, but there is nothing legacy about the new sensors, processing power, and data links. All of that changes, says Berkeley. And you have to send guys to school. Still, the F-15 is faster, can fly higher, and is able to haul a significantly heavier payload than any other fighter, up to 12 air-to-air missiles or 15 air-to-ground weapons, including the big bunker buster. So it would be a more useful weapon in lower threat environments everywhere other than shooting a shooting war with China or Russia that don't require next generation air dominance whiz. Yeah, so you fly it into a weaker country like Iraq or something like that, and you'll have fun. But what happens when you have to run up against the
Russians?
Yeah, the tiger and the bear. Then it's of no use. At that point, they'll shoot that thing down.
Well, you know, I thought the coating that we're going to put on this is going to be a game changer.
Well, on the F-35, yeah, but not on the you don't have the coating on the F-15. Once upon a time, the F-15 was the next generation air dominance whiz, a twin-engine, twin-tail, single-seat scimitar capable of exceeding Mach 2.5 and 60,000 feet. It was a brainchild of a cadre of Air Force visionaries who had seen the F-4 Phantom bested by MiG-21s in Vietnam War dogfights. So that's what I was referring to earlier. The MiG-21 was a game changer in the Vietnam War. With a thrust to weight ratio greater than 1:1, it could fly fully vertically immediately after takeoff. It's got all the power and oomph of a 1970s muscle car, but it's got the handling of a Ferrari. Stop it. Says Boeing chief test pilot Dan Drager, who flew F-15s in the Air Force and has since tested every variant of other than the Japanese model built under license by Mitsubishi.
Whoa.
Yeah, Mitsubishi Heavy does all Japan's air fighters. The air crews see it as a heavy hitter that can carry the throw weight and get it where it needs to go. But if they need to mix it up with somebody, it's going to hold its own in the air-to-air arena. And because it's a twin-engine plane, there's a lot of confidence that it can take some battle damage and some failures and still get back. Yeah, see, I'm not going to read this whole thing because, we should have done a whole hangout just on this and this alone. But that being said, I think that they have their decisions all mixed up because it's still not fifth generation, no matter what they do. It's still a fourth generation fighter. Why invest so much money into old technology? I mean, you would never upgrade a Pentium 3 with like a NVIDIA GeForce now, just to stay current.
Hold my beer.
Unbelievable. We got Julian on the panel.
What's going on?
Salute the Black Brain Trust.
What up? Put some volume on your mic, my brother. And Gino, what's going on?
Good evening, fam.
All right. Mrs. Evolving, do you have anything you want to add to what's been said?
When you see this amount of money being spent, I think it really helps to put things in perspective around where we really are, just as a people, just our priorities in this country. And then you think about progress that some people really want to talk about that Black people have made. And this is what you're talking about. This kind of money is being spent here.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we have Black politicians trying to explain to us that we've made progress as a people. I'm sorry. I'm just, the numbers that you were reading off to me, that I'm reading here myself here, I'm just taken back. Like,
Yeah,
It should almost seem unreal.
yeah, it is. It is because, like we were saying before, automation is going to replace jobs. Well, guess what? Boeing is replacing a lot of jobs in in their factories. Um, from what 80 to 100 people down to 20 people. I mean, and people will tell us that fourth industrialization, nothing is. My job is safe. Yeah, right. Ask those guys at Boeing.
We're gonna dig into we're gonna dig into this this stimulus package that was so I think it was maybe yesterday or the day before I had mentioned it. They were close to signing an agreement on a stimulus package. They actually signed it today.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the number that you're hearing is 4 trillion. That's with a T, $4 trillion. Okay. However, when you really dig deeper into it, and we're gonna I'm gonna put something together for this for Friday, because we are going to be doing an economics live stream about economic policy in these types of situations, right? When we've got global pandemic, we've got a global financial markets crisis. We've also got global hostilities, in terms of like there's conflicts going on, there's trade wars taking shape. There's like 3 layers of like very, very dangerous scenarios all kind of playing out at the same time. So to really steady the US ship, so to speak, yeah, they basically reached into the Fed coffers, and the number's actually 14 trillion. And we'll like I said, on Friday, we'll break it down. The 4 trillion is what's going to go to, things like, the basically the UBI. Okay, it's good. It's going towards that. There's loans and grants for small businesses. There's also going to be, bailout money for the large corporations. But then there's the other financial considerations that were part of this that really aren't put out there. So when you cover the complete stimulus package, it's like at 14 trillion. So when I'm sorry, what was your name? Mr. Volving was talking about the amount of money that is being spent on things like fighter jets and planes, right? 14 trillion. Just think about that for a second.
Yeah. Yeah, we need 1,100 fighter jets, that don't work, and have never been tested in combat.
Yeah, but if you just got $14 trillion, what's a couple of, POS fighter jets,
Well, that is your $14 trillion. If you really think about it, if you really do the math on it, $350 million plane.
Yeah, we just go get more money. Oh, this goes, Mike. Just go get more money.
Oh, well, but that would cause inflation, right?
Hey, we'll say that for Friday. We'll say that for Friday.
Gino, you have something you want to add? Your hand up.
Yeah, in regards to what you guys speaking about, I work in the acquisition field, procurement field, in the private, not in the private, but in the public sector.
Oh, did you drop out?
Classes that we have to take for our certifications, and instructor was discussing the topic, and he was speaking of some of these programs in the Department of Defense, right? And we're just speaking of the acquisition process, the procurement process, contract management, and things of that nature. And he was saying that there are people that will work on a contract, on one of these contracts, their entire career. The program, the acquisition, the contract management program will last 35 years. They will start at this, they will start at DOD, at any one of these agencies, whether it's Army, Navy. There's like a million of different agencies under DOD. and they will start their career fresh out. They will be retiring, and that program, that acquisition, that contract is still alive, and they're retiring, leaving that program running. And when you think about that, that's a huge amount of money. And we're just speaking of um that employee's salary is not included in the price of these aircrafts, weapon system, whatever they might be procuring. That's not even included in the price of those kind of items. When you look at their salary, that person in a span of 25, 30 some years would have had several multiple raises, and that's not even coming out the price of those things. So those things get really extremely pricey, man. And I was shocked. I'm in the field, but I didn't even know people will work on a contract that long, because what I work on mostly is construction. We do a lot of dredging, things of that nature, architecture, engineering studies, and things of that nature. But I don't work in the weapons acquisition field. But it was very shocking to hear that a program, one contract, will last 35 years.
Yeah, I mean, it makes a lot of sense that they sign long-term contracts with these type of things because of the life cycle development of these sort of systems. So we got Manda tomorrow on the panel. He might be able to speak a little bit more about F-16, F-15 Strike Eagles versus F-22s and things like that. What to do, MOT? I think MOT might be driving.
Okay.
Yeah. Let me jump to this next article. This is from RT.com. France recalling troops from Iraq over coronavirus.
Yeah, a lot of people are doing that.
Yes, I see that. Paris will remove all of its troops currently stationed in Iraq for the first time over concerns about the spread of Corona-19. The French military announced France has taken the decision to repatriate until further notice its personnel deployed in operation in Shamal, Iraq. The Armed Forces Ministry said on Wednesday, adding that around 100 troops were in the country and that airstrikes against the Islamic State would continue. Abdul Karim Khalif, the spokesman for the caretaker Prime Minister Abdul Mahdi, the newspaper Al-Sabah on Wednesday that French troops have already left. Yeah, they're not coming back, trust me. Starting in 2014, France's operation. I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say we got some.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if Gino might be working on a contract for construction, like working a backhoe or something like that. Starting in 2014, France's operation Shamal spanned both Iraq and Syria and aimed to stem the expansion of the self-styled terrorist caliphate, flying airstrikes over both countries and sending a limited number of ground troops to Iraq. Last week, the United Kingdom also temporarily pulled troops from Iraq over the coronavirus outbreak, leaving only key military personnel in the country to support the Baghdad government and partners in the anti-IS coalition. The Czech military announced a withdrawal earlier on Wednesday, citing the same reason, bringing home around 30 soldiers who were previously trained Iraqi troops. While Iraq has confirmed some 346 cases of COVID-19, France has tallied over 25,000 with more than 1,300 deaths, making it one of Europe's hardest hit nations. The virus has infected in excess of 460,000 people worldwide since the outbreak began late last year, killing 20,857 people. According to the Johns Hopkins COVID-19 tracker, the withdrawal comes as France deploys troops within its own borders to fight a war of a different kind against the virus, with President Emmanuel Macron announcing the start of Operation Resilience on Wednesday. The mission will see French soldiers assist with health, logistics, and protection as part of a nationwide effort to halt the spread of a contagion, and will be entirely devoted to helping and supporting the population. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense to point, an M4 rifle at people who may be potentially sick. It's the wrong type of war.
Yeah, right. I mean, you already got like okay. I don't know if this has impacted the yellow vest protests, because you haven't heard anything about it since all this stuff.
Nah, they probably figured out this it's nice time to regroup,
Yeah.
and go home and eat or something.
Right.
Yeah, but here's the other thing. I mean, if they could walk away from their obligation, this pretty much opens the door for any country to walk away from their obligations over there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, and you gotta understand, under any other administration, this never would happen. You just can't walk out of something that you committed to.
Mm-hmm.
Well, wait a minute, but was this under some sort of NATO accord that they were there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you do have a whole lot of shuffling and consideration of a lot of European nations as to whether they want to stick with this whole EU NATO thing.
They're not sending those guys back. Period. No reason.
No, they're not.
Now they're gonna send those guys back.
I'm not saying they're sending them back. I'm just
no.
saying.
I'm not saying you're saying that. I'm saying the gist here is, we're pulling them out because of COVID-19. Yeah, right. That's their exit.
Like, come on, man.
Yeah, we're out of here, man.
100 troops is going to storm the entire country and help with what? Come on, man.
Yeah, but you had guys losing limbs over there to IEDs. And they didn't pull their guys out for that. This is the perfect escape for them. Like,
oh yeah. I mean, man. COVID-19, we out though. Thanks.
Yeah, I was gonna say we out though. It's like, man, like all the things you could have pulled your people out of theaters over, and basically you like, oh man, they got the flu over there, man. Get our boys out of there.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Not the no weapons of mass destruction, not the supposed withdrawal both of the times under Obama. COVID-19. Time to go, folks.
Oh yeah. Anybody else have anything you want to add to military pulling out? Yeah, I don't see American Abrams tanks pounding the streets, in any sort of urban city to fight a virus. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing that.
Yeah, so you're gonna tear up the already crumbling infrastructure to hand out masks in a tank.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Well, it's to stop people from looting. Got to point that 120 millimeter cannon at somebody. All right. Next item on the docket is from AlJazeera.com. Lockdowns, closures. How is each U.S. state handling coronavirus? This is going to be pretty long. The United States has seen a rapid increase of coronavirus cases over the past week, going from roughly 1,000 to well over 46,000 over March 23rd, as of March 23rd, according to Johns Hopkins University. That is largely due to the ramp up of testing across the country.
Yeah.
The U.S. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was there was a Tri-County town hall last night, and they said to expect the numbers to skyrocket.
Mm-hmm.
They're supposed to be having this lockdown. It's supposed to ramp up for like another 3 weeks in a row.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's supposed to stable off for the fourth week, and then it's going to be a rapid de-escalation. Mm-hmm. And that's just for this round of it. So they're talking about by the end of beginning of May, things will be back right. This is just Colorado itself. So if they're doing it like that, then it's going to be like everybody else. But right now, I was down south, and people were doing all the normal stuff. The restaurants wasn't open, but yeah, man. So that's what they said. There's going to be a rapid increase because they say the current infections that they're treating right now happened like 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And they're not really testing people. So they're fast tracking ways for people to get tested at like Quest Diagnostic and stuff like that. but they want you to actually have a fever and to be showing symptoms. Like if you ain't walking in bad shape, they're just not even gonna touch you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
They-
Uh, Mike, can I add something to what MOT said?
Go ahead.
I'm currently living in Western Europe in the Benelux area. I don't want to dox myself, so I'm not going to say which country in particular, but it's the same thing over here with the doctors. They've got papers on the windows saying, don't walk in. We're not accepting walk-ins. You have to call and make an appointment first. Then they're going to figure out whether or not your symptoms are actually severe enough. If you don't have a fever, if you're not almost damn near dying, they're not going to see you. They're telling people to stay home and just deal with it until things get really bad. So it's
Yeah,
similar to over here as well.
Yeah, they want to see at least one symptom first.
Yeah, for sure.
People just keep walking in, they don't have any symptoms. You're kind of clogging it up for the people who do need access. So I can understand.
Exactly.
I can understand that point. The U.S. government, especially the administration of President Donald Trump, was criticized for a slow response, but has ramped up action in recent days, easing restrictions on testing, vaccines, and passing benefit packages for workers, employers, and international corporations. Yeah, Spanish. So. The White House has also recommended limiting gatherings to 10 people, among other guidelines that were issued with frank urgency, but that are not mandatory. But the states of the U.S. have significant powers to handle the crisis, with many adopting similar approaches, including school and public business closures, while others tackle the issue by giving power to local officials. How has each state reacted? Alabama Governor Kay Ivey issued a state of emergency on March 13th and said that all public schools will be closed from March 18th to April 6th. Alabama saw its first confirmed case on Friday, with 29 cases confirmed by Tuesday. Alaska. Mike Dunleavy announced on March 16th that state-run libraries, museums, and archives will be closed through the end of March, and he ordered boarding school programs to send students home. Schools have been closed to students until March 30th. Some municipalities, such as state capital Anchorage, ordered bars, eateries, and public spaces to close before federal officials suspended the order statewide starting on March 18th. We just went live last night, so interesting. Let me see. LT was in the South, so I like to know which state. What are they doing in? Let's look at Colorado. Colorado Governor Jared Polis followed other states in prohibiting on-site dining at eateries and bars in Colorado, while still allowing takeout service effective the morning of March 1st. Up to 5 customers will be allowed inside at any one time to pick up orders, but they must maintain a 1.8 meter distance. The order will last for at least 30 days. On March 18th, Polis ordered all in-person schooling to end until at least April 17th. He also banned crowds of more than 10 people.
That's what the call was with last night, him.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the other thing.
Mm-hmm.
If there's like crowds in places, they just walk in and shut the whole restaurant down.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I was talking about yesterday, that we're sorry because this lady got on who was really upset about her business being closed. Like, if I have a rush, well, I'm like, well, you know what? You better have a line out the door,
Yeah.
you know, because there's a lot of people inside. They're like, shut down.
Yeah. I was just at Whole Foods, and they had about 150 people out there. They're only letting 3 people in at a time. I said, nah, I'm not going to wait for that. They can, they can keep that. Yeah.
It's just like here.
Mrs. Evolving has a hand up.
So, I want to say about October or so, in Jamaica, they were having this campaign for Target. It's called inflation targeting. And essentially what this campaign really looked at having essentially the central banks, they like to have the inflation rate about two, and I can't get into all the technicalities of it because that's not even my area, right? But anyway, so essentially, I'm looking at a lot of what's going on as something that was bound to happen because of the fact that inflation targeting literally is like a system where the central bank sets this inflation rate. Is anyone familiar with inflation targeting?
I've heard of it.
So like, essentially, they pretty much toy around with the economy so they can get things to a place where the central bank, and for us in the United States, the Federal Reserve, they're able to kind of have, I guess, that the lending power, because I guess there has to be, you know, a certain level of debt that you have to be, countries, the economy of these countries literally have to kind of be in some kind, you know, the debt relationship with the Federal Reserve. Is everyone kind of familiar with that?
Yeah.
Right. So,
Vaguely.
well, see, the thing about it is there's a saying that if United States have a cold in like the third world, like they have pneumonia, and like I feel like once that was starting to be something that they had reggae artists getting involved in, there's even some talks that Jay-Z was in Jamaica kind of getting involved with this, and literally they had songs where they would be singing about inflation targeting to really prepare the people, like, oh no, you know, the central bank wants us to raise the inflation rate, so we're gonna get everybody on board. So like you could look up the commercials on YouTube because they turned it into a whole thing. And it just seemed like they're just, I don't want to minimize COVID-19 because I believe that people are really dying from it. But I do believe that they are definitely in this country getting a lot of the financial stuff together behind this. They're like, okay, we're gonna slow down production, slow the economy down. We're gonna stabilize some stuff over here. And it's like, we're gonna get people into a place where people are gonna literally, they're gonna have to be in some jacked up debt situation, even if they don't wanna be. Just because.
Yeah, I mean, but you need a vibrant economy to work in order for
Yeah.
everything else to work. So
Yeah.
why would he throw away his whole economy over a virus to restabilize things? He needs a
Yeah.
stable economy in order to get reelected.
Yeah, definitely. I don't see it as some sort of kind of like a global policy or some sort of new world order thing. But one thing I have been thinking is it's the most perfect time to try new things such as UBI and you know, telecommuting from home into work and stuff like that.
Yeah, seriously. Yeah.
You don't
It's
have-
perfect time, but I don't think it's done on purpose or anything like that. But you know,
I don't think it was done on,
I would-
sorry.
Yeah.
I don't think it's a matter of something being done on purpose. I think it's almost one of those things where, like, you know, not letting a good crisis go to waste. So it's like, oh, okay, well, we can slow down the economy. We can get this. I mean, think about what's happening now. Are you going to be more inclined to use credit, or are you going to be using like emptying out your bank account to take care of what's going on right now? Like if you were actually home and you had to figure out how you're going to pay your bills and take care of things, you're most likely going to use credit, right?
For sure.
Right. So then if you were not thinking about that, say if that was something that your goal was, I'm trying to get away from all my debts, I'm trying to get out of all that. It's like a way of kind of like enslaving you. But I'm not saying that, I just feel like they're taking advantage of this opportunity. And I do believe that the whole technology part of it is a part of this, you know, opportunity to, you know what, I'll say this.
No, you're absolutely right. I understand where you're going with this, that they're using the crisis as a way to move agendas that they couldn't move before. The only
A
problem is,
lot of things that they couldn't do before, they can do now under the guise of, oh, COVID-19.
yeah, they'll hide. It's the perfect storm.
It's the perfect storm. It is.
Well, okay. Well, let me
Yes,
say,
yes.
right, because again, I think what you're touching on, the link that I posted in the chat for Dylan Radigan's breakdown of the $14 trillion, literally, it's literally, not only is it talking about what you're mentioning, not only does it address what you're mentioning, it also gives the reasoning why behind, opposed to say like 2008, when we had the financial crisis, and we had the mortgage, we had the whole mortgage thing just kind of go up in flames. So what Dillinger was basically breaking down in this video is that what you have